The sky was no longer blue. It was painted with smoke, ash, and the burning trails of falling ships. Once this world had been green and alive, but now the land was broken under the weight of war. Daniel, a human soldier, stumbled across the ruined battlefield, his boots crunching over shattered metal and cracked stone. His breathing was heavy inside his helmet, but his training kept him moving. He had survived the main clash, but survival, on this planet, was never certain. The battle had ended hours ago, or maybe it had just paused. Silence never lasted long here. Daniel's squad was gone, scattered, missing, or worse. He had tried calling them on comms, but the channel was filled with static. The wreckage around him was proof of the fight's cost. Downed ships with smoke rising from their engines, alien weapons glowing faintly in the dirt, and the bodies of soldiers, both human and alien, lying where they had fallen. He pressed himself against the remains of a broken wall, scanning the horizon with his rifle raised. The air was thick with dust, the smell of scorched metal sharp in his lungs. Every shadow felt alive, every whisper of wind a threat. Yet he moved carefully, searching for water, for supplies, or maybe just another heartbeat. That was when he heard it. A faint sound, too soft to be the grinding of machines or the creak of wreckage. It was a voice, weak, strained, and strange. Daniel froze. Slowly he followed the sound across the ruined ground until he reached the edge of a crater. He peered down and saw a figure lying half-buried under shattered armor plating. The figure was tall, armored in dark material that shimmered, faintly as though it held its own energy. A mask covered the face completely, sleek and alien, with faint lights pulsing near the sides. Daniel's first thought was enemy. His second was trap. But when the figure's hand twitched weakly, reaching for nothing, his instincts overruled his caution. Daniel slid down the crater's slope, rifle still pointed but his steps quick. As he drew closer, the figure stirred again and tried to rise but collapsed back with a muffled groan. The sound was unlike any voice Daniel had heard before, yet strangely familiar. He knelt, pressing his rifle to the side, and reached out. The armored stranger turned her head slightly toward him, and he realized the figure was female, her frame smaller, her movements fragile. The mask's eye lenses flickered faintly, and she spoke. The words were broken, halting, but Daniel understood them. "Help. Please." He blinked in surprise. How could she speak his language? Or was his mind simply shaping the sounds into meaning because he wanted to believe? He shook his head. "It didn't matter. I've got you," Daniel muttered, his voice rough but steady. He slid his arms under her shoulders and pulled her free of the wreckage. She was heavier than she looked, her armor dense, her body limp. As he lifted her, she let out a soft gasp of pain, her gloved hand pressing against her side where energy, burns had eaten through armor and flesh alike. Daniel carried her to the cover of a half-collapsed wall, lowering her gently to the ground. He quickly searched his pack for field bandages and med foam. He hesitated. Should he really be saving an alien? She could be an enemy commander. She could kill him the moment she regained her strength. But then he looked at her again, her body trembling, her breath shallow, and he felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in weeks: humanity. He worked quickly, sealing the burns with foam, wrapping her wounds with clean fabric. She didn't resist. She only watched him, her masked face turning slightly as if studying every move. When he tightened the last wrap, she whispered again, "You are human." Daniel almost laughed, but the sound died in his throat. "Yeah, and you're not. Doesn't matter right now. You'll bleed out if I don't do this." Her mask's lights dimmed for a moment before glowing faintly again. "Strange. Human helps enemy." Daniel sat back on his heels, wiping sweat from his brow. His armor felt heavier by the second, but he forced himself to stay alert. "Maybe I don't see you as an enemy. Right now you're just someone dying in front of me." For a long moment, the only sound was the distant rumble of shifting metal in the ruins. Then she spoke again, voice quieter than before. Not enemy. Not to you. Her words lingered in Daniel's ears as he leaned back against the wall, rifle still within reach. The exhaustion of the day threatened to pull him under, but he forced his eyes to stay sharp. Beside him, the masked stranger lay still, her chest rising and falling unevenly. The battlefield around them was vast and silent, but Daniel knew silence here was only the pause before another storm, and now, he wasn't alone. As night began to fall over the broken land, Daniel kept watch, his thoughts racing. Who was this masked woman? Why had she spoken his language? And why did he feel that saving her was going to change everything? For now she was alive. That was enough. But deep inside, Daniel knew the mask was more than armor. It was hiding something, something she didn't want him to see. And one day, he would find out what it was. The night on the ruined world was long and cold. Daniel sat with his back to the broken wall, rifle across his lap, and eyes fixed on the shifting shadows. The masked woman lay nearby, breathing shallow but steady. The strange lights on her mask pulsed gently as if marking time. Daniel fought against sleep, but his body ached from exhaustion. Every small sound set his nerves on edge, the distant groan of collapsing metal, the crackle of unseen fire, the hiss of wind through hollow ruins. He had fought in many battles, but this silence felt different. He wasn't only guarding himself now, he was guarding her too. At some point during the night, she stirred. Daniel leaned closer, ready for anything. Her head turned slightly toward him, her voice faint but clear. You stayed. Daniel let out a short, dry laugh. Didn't have anywhere better to go. You could leave. Safer for you. Safer doesn't always mean better. For a moment, she was quiet. Then she whispered again. Why? Daniel thought about the question. Why had he helped her? Why was he still here instead of moving toward the human lines or looking for his squad? He could not explain it fully. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something deeper. Because you needed help, he finally answered. And I was there. That's reason enough. She shifted weakly, as if trying to sit up, but her body refused. Daniel gently pressed her shoulder, keeping her still. You're not healed yet. Don't push it. Her masked face tilted toward him. The glowing lines on the mask brightened slightly, almost like a heartbeat quickening. Strange human, she murmured. Morning came slowly, painting the ruins in pale light. Daniel rose and searched the area for food and water. He scavenged broken packs, shattered drones, and burnt-out shelters. At last, he found a half-crushed container with emergency rations. Most were ruined, but a few were still sealed. He brought them back, kneeling beside her. Here, it's not much, but it'll keep you alive. She turned her head toward the package, then back at him. Human food will not work. Daniel frowned. Figures. He pulled out one pack for himself. Chewing slowly, the taste like old cardboard. Then what do you eat? She was silent for a long while, then finally spoke. Energy. Crystals. My armor can use them. I had some, but lost in battle. Daniel thought hard. He had seen glowing shards scattered across the battlefield before, taken from alien tech. Maybe those were the crystals. If so, he might be able to find more. I'll look for them, he said. Her masked face turned sharply, the sudden movement surprising him. Too dangerous. You will not survive. Daniel smirked faintly. You don't know me very well yet. Her breathing quickened, and for a moment she seemed about to argue, but then she sank back, her strength fading. Foolish human, she whispered, but her voice carried a strange warmth, almost like trust. Daniel set out again, careful but determined. The ruins stretched wide, full of hidden dangers. He avoided patrols, slipping between shadows, his rifle always ready. Hours passed as he searched the wreckage. At last, in the twisted remains of an alien fighter, he found a cluster of faintly glowing crystals. They pulsed with soft light humming quietly. Daniel collected as many as he could carry, then made his way back. When he returned, she was weaker, her breathing shallow. He knelt quickly, showing her the crystals. "These? Are these what you need?" The lights on her mask brightened instantly. "Yes." Daniel helped place them into a small port on her armor. As the crystals slid inside, the armor glowed faintly and her body relaxed. The trembling in her hands slowed, her breathing steadied. "Better," she whispered, her voice stronger than before. Daniel sat back, relief washing over him. "Good. Thought I was about to lose you." For the first time, she turned her head fully toward him, her masked gaze fixed on his face. "You risked your life. For me. Why?" Daniel met her gaze. "Because I couldn't just sit here and watch you die." The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Then she said quietly, "I do not understand humans. But maybe I will." As days passed, they moved slowly together through the ruins. Daniel carried supplies, kept watch, and fought off small enemy patrols. She, though wounded, guided him through dangerous paths with surprising knowledge of the land. Each day, he learned a little more about her. She never gave her name. She never removed her mask. But she spoke of distant worlds, of battles fought long before humanity reached the stars. She told stories in fragments, her voice carrying both sorrow and pride. One night, as they sheltered beneath the wreckage of a transport, Daniel asked, "Why hide your face?" She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she said, "Because it is not yet time. If you saw me now, everything would change." Daniel frowned but didn't press further. He had learned enough to know she kept her secrets for a reason. Still, the mystery gnawed at him. Who was she really? Why did her voice sometimes carry the weight of command, as if she had once ruled armies? The more time he spent with her, the stronger the bond grew. She was no longer just a stranger. She was someone who trusted him with her life. And though he would never admit it out loud, Daniel trusted her too. But trust on this battlefield was fragile. Danger was never far. On the 6th night, as they rested inside a broken structure, distant lights appeared on the horizon. Patrols. Daniel cursed softly, gripping his rifle. "They're sweeping this way," he muttered. "We need to move." She pushed herself up, still weak but steadier than before. "I will help." He shook his head. "You're still hurt." "I am still stronger than you think," she replied firmly. For the first time, Daniel saw a flash of the strength beneath her quiet tone. Something about the way she said it reminded him of a leader, not just a soldier. He nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but stay behind me." As the patrol drew closer, Daniel felt his heart race. The war wasn't over. The danger wasn't gone. And the woman beside him, hidden behind her mask, was the key to something far larger than he understood. He didn't know it yet, but the secrets she carried would soon pull him into a truth far beyond the battlefield, one that could change the fate of more than just himself. The patrol passed, but not without tension. Daniel and the masked woman hid inside the shadow of a collapsed structure, waiting as soldiers moved across the ruins. Their searchlights cut through the dust, their voices sharp in a language Daniel did not understand. He held his breath, his finger resting lightly on the trigger of his rifle. The woman beside him was still, her mask faintly glowing as if her calm steadied them both. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, but at last, the lights faded, and the voices grew distant. Daniel released his breath, his body sagging, with relief. He turned toward her, whispering, "That was too close." She didn't answer at first, only shifted slightly, her masked face tilted toward the sky. Then she said, "They hunt me. Not you. If they find us, they will not let you live." Daniel frowned. "Why you? You're not just another soldier, are you?" Her silence was heavy. He knew she was choosing her words carefully. Finally, she said, "I carry a name that others fear. If they knew, they would never stop chasing me." Daniel wanted to press for more, but her voice held a weight that told him the subject was dangerous. So he let it go, for now. They moved again the next day, traveling, through broken streets that once held markets, homes, and gardens. Now only rubble remained, but Daniel could almost imagine the life that had existed before war shattered it. He saw alien carvings on the walls, faded paintings, and broken statues. Whoever had lived here, they had built with pride. The woman walked beside him, slower than before but stronger with each step. The crystals he had found gave her energy, though he could see the strain of her wounds. Sometimes she leaned against him when her legs faltered. Daniel didn't mind. That evening they found shelter inside the remains of a temple. Its roof was torn open, but the walls still stood, carved with strange symbols. A cold wind whistled through the broken stone. They lit a small fire, careful to keep the smoke hidden. Daniel sat across from her, watching the flames flicker. "This place," he said softly. "Was it yours?" She looked around, her masked face turning toward the carvings. "Long ago my people worshipped here. They prayed to the stars, to the light beyond them, but war changed everything. Belief turned into fear. Temples became ruins." Her voice carried sorrow, the kind that came from memories too heavy to forget. Daniel listened in silence. "War always destroys the past," he said at last. She turned. To him. "And yet humans still fight. Why?" Daniel gave a small laugh, though it was hollow. "Because we're stubborn. Because sometimes we fight for survival, sometimes for pride, sometimes for things that don't matter. But not all humans want war. Some just want to live." She was quiet, considering his words. Finally, she said, "You are different. Most soldiers kill first. You saved me instead." Daniel shrugged. "Maybe I'm just tired of killing." They sat in silence, the fire crackling softly. The night outside was vast and empty, but inside the broken temple, there was a strange peace. Later, when the fire had died down to embers, she spoke again, her voice softer than before. "There is something you must know, but I cannot tell you yet. If you knew now, it would put you in danger." Daniel leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You're already putting me in danger. Whoever you are, they're chasing you hard. If I don't know the truth, how can I help you?" Her head dipped slightly. "Because you already do. You protect me without asking who I am. That is rare." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're not making this easy, you know." Her voice carried a faint note of something like amusement. "If it were easy, I would not be here." The days that followed blurred into a rhythm. They traveled by night, rested by day, always moving toward the mountains where Daniel believed friendly forces might be regrouping. Along the way, they spoke more, sharing fragments of their worlds. Daniel told her of Earth, the oceans, the forests, the cities filled with lights. She listened quietly, sometimes asking small questions as if she were trying to picture it in her mind. In return, she spoke of her own world. She described towers that touched the clouds, ships that sailed the skies, and fields of crystal that glowed like stars at night. Her words painted images that seemed too beautiful for someone like Daniel, who had only known Earth's simple beauty. But not all her stories were bright. Sometimes her voice grew heavy, and she spoke of betrayal, of enemies that once were allies, of kingdoms torn apart by ambition. Daniel realized then that she carried not only secrets but also grief. One night, as they rested near a river of blackened water, Daniel asked, "All these stories, who are you really?" She turned toward him slowly. The mask reflected the pale light of the stars. "If I tell you now, will you still see me the same?" Daniel held her gaze. "I don't know, but I'd rather know the truth than walk blind." Her hand rose to her mask, fingers brushing the edge. For a moment, Daniel thought she would remove it, but then she lowered her hand again, shaking her head. "Not yet. If I remove it now, you will be marked too. They will know." Daniel's frustration burned, but he swallowed it. He could see her struggle, the conflict in her every movement. She wasn't hiding for pride. She was hiding for survival. So he let it go, though the mystery grew heavier each day. That night, sleep came, slowly. Daniel lay awake, staring at the stars through the cracks in the ruined roof. Beside him, the woman slept, her breathing calm. He wondered what face lay behind the mask. Was she like humans, or something entirely different? Why did she trust him, a stranger, more than her own kind? The next morning they moved again, but danger found them sooner than expected. While crossing a valley of broken machines, a group of scouts appeared. Daniel cursed, pulling her into cover. Blaster fire rained down, forcing them to crawl between twisted metal. She reached for her weapon, but her body trembled. Daniel shook his head. "Stay down, I'll handle this." He rose, firing bursts from his rifle, using the wreckage for cover. The scouts were skilled, but Daniel fought with precision, his training guiding his aim. One by one, they fell until silence returned. When he returned to her side, she looked at him for a long moment. "You risk yourself for me again. Why?" Daniel smiled faintly, though his voice was serious. "Because I said I'd get you through this. And I keep my word." For the first time, she whispered something that sounded almost like her name. It was soft, carried on the wind, and Daniel almost missed it. He wanted to ask her to repeat it, but before he could, she leaned back, exhaustion pulling her under. Daniel sat beside her, rifle across his lap, his mind racing. He had heard the faint syllables of her identity, but he wasn't sure if they were real or just a dream. Either way, he knew one thing. The mask wasn't just hiding her face. It was hiding a truth that could shake everything. And as he looked at her sleeping form, Daniel realized he was no longer just protecting a stranger. He was guarding a secret that the whole galaxy might kill for. The valley stretched wide under a gray sky. Broken machines lay scattered like the bones of giants, silent reminders of the battles that had come before. Daniel and the masked woman moved carefully between the ruins, keeping low, their eyes sharp, for movement. The silence was thick, but Daniel felt the tension in his chest. Something was coming. For days they had avoided enemy patrols. For days they had survived on scraps and hidden paths. But luck never lasted long in war. And today, their luck ended. A shrill sound pierced the air, a signal. Lights appeared on the ridges above, followed by the shapes of soldiers spreading out. Dozens of them. They moved with precision, blocking every escape. Daniel swore under his breath, gripping his rifle tightly. He turned to her. "They found us." She stood tall despite her weakness, her mask glowing faintly. "They came for me. But now you are with me. They will not let you live either." Daniel looked at the enemy lines closing in. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "Then we fight." The first shots rang out, beams of light cutting through the dust. Daniel dragged her behind a pile of wreckage, returning fire with sharp bursts. His training took over, his body moving with instinct. He fired, ducked, moved again. But the enemy pressed closer, their numbers overwhelming. Beside him, she raised her arm. Her armor hummed as a pulse of energy burst outward, striking the enemy with a force Daniel had never seen. Soldiers flew back, weapons shattering, but the effort drained her. She stumbled, catching herself on the wreckage. Daniel caught her arm, pulling her down to cover. "Don't push yourself," she shook her head. "If I do nothing, we both die." Daniel's jaw tightened. He rose again, firing until his rifle overheated. The battlefield became chaos. Dust, smoke, fire, and the cries of soldiers. He moved, like a shadow, striking fast, retreating, always keeping himself between her and the enemy. But the numbers kept coming. A blast hit near their cover, throwing Daniel to the ground. His ears rang, his body aching. When he looked up, the enemy was close. Too close. He lifted his rifle, but it was empty. His hands went to his sidearm, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. Then she rose. Her mask shone brighter, her armor glowing, as if the crystals within burned with new life. She extended her hand and a blade of pure energy formed in her grip. With surprising strength, she charged into the fray, moving like a storm. Her strikes were precise, her movements graceful despite her wounds. Daniel watched in awe, forcing himself back to his feet. He covered her with his sidearm, firing at enemies who tried to flank her. Together they fought as one, human and alien side by side, but the tide was against them. More soldiers poured into the valley, surrounding them on all sides. Daniel's body screamed with exhaustion, but he refused to stop. He fought until his arm burned, until his vision blurred. And then it happened. A shot slipped past his guard, striking her square in the chest. She staggered, her blade flickering before vanishing. Daniel's heart froze as she collapsed into his arms. "No!" he shouted, his voice raw. He dragged her back behind cover, firing wildly to keep the enemy at bay. Her body was heavy, her breathing shallow. The glow on her mask flickered weakly, as if fading with her life. She reached up, her gloved hand brushing against his armor. Her voice was faint, trembling. "It is time." Daniel shook his head desperately. "No, stay with me. Don't talk like that. You'll make it. I'll get you out of here." Her head moved slowly side to side. "No, you must know the truth. Remove my mask." Daniel froze. His heart pounded in his chest. For so long she had guarded the mask, kept her secret hidden. And now, here, in the middle of the battlefield, she was asking him to break that barrier. "I can't," he whispered, his voice shaking. "If I take it off, what happens to you?" Her voice was barely a breath. "You will finally know who I am." The battle raged around them, but Daniel heard nothing. The world narrowed to the woman in his arms, her life slipping away with every second. He lifted his trembling hands, fingers brushing against the edges of the mask. He hesitated, his mind torn. If he removed it, everything would change. But if he didn't, this might be her last moment. Her hand gripped his wrist, weakly, guiding him. "Please." Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. Slowly, carefully, he began to lift the mask. Before he could finish, another explosion rocked the valley. Dust and fire filled the air, forcing Daniel to shield her with his body. He coughed, his lungs burning, but he held her tightly. When the dust cleared, the enemy had fallen back, regrouping at the ridge. For now there was a pause. Daniel looked down at her. Her mask was loose now, his hand still holding it. Her eyes, hidden for so long, were just behind that final barrier. His breath caught in his throat. The truth he had waited for, the truth she had feared, was about to be revealed, and deep inside, Daniel knew this moment would change everything. Not just for him, not just for her, but for the war itself. The battle was not yet won. Danger still surrounded them. But in his arms, the masked woman whispered one last time, her voice barely audible. "See me, and you will understand." Daniel's hand trembled as he prepared to remove the mask fully, his heart racing faster than any battle drum. The truth was seconds away. Daniel's fingers shook as they rested on the smooth surface of the alien mask. For days he had wondered who she really was. For days he had heard her voice, but never seen her face. Now, here on the battlefield, with her life fading in his arms, she asked him to do the one thing she had always forbidden. "Remove my mask," she whispered again, her voice breaking. The world around him was chaos, distant gunfire, the echo of explosions, the rumble of machines. But Daniel heard. Only her. He swallowed hard, his heart pounding like thunder. Slowly, with trembling hands, he lifted the mask away. It came loose with a faint hiss, as though sealing systems released their hold. The glow faded, and the mask slipped free, falling into his lap. Daniel froze. Beneath the mask was not a monster, not the alien face he had feared. It was a woman, her features striking and graceful, her skin pale like moonlight. Her long hair, dark and flowing, framed her face even in the chaos of battle. Her eyes, though heavy with pain, shone with strength and sorrow. For a moment, Daniel forgot the war. He forgot the enemies closing in. All he saw was her. "You," he whispered, unable to finish. She gave a faint, weak smile. "Now you see." Daniel struggled to find words. You're like us. Human, almost. Why hide? Why wear this mask?" Her breathing was shallow, but her voice carried the weight of truth. "Because I am not just a soldier. I am the last heir to a broken throne." Daniel's mind reeled. "A throne?" She nodded slowly. "My people once ruled worlds. I was born to lead, but betrayal destroyed everything. Enemies hunted me, across the stars. If they knew who I was, they would never stop until I was dead." Her eyes met his, filled with quiet fire. "That is why I hid. That is why I wore the mask, to live, to fight another day." Daniel's chest tightened. He looked, down at the mask in his hands, then back at her. "And now you're here, with me. Why trust me with this?" Her hand lifted weakly, brushing against his chest plate. "Because you chose to save me, when you had no reason to. You gave me something I thought lost. Trust." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He had fought countless battles, lost friends, lost hope, but this moment struck deeper than any wound. The sound of marching broke the silence. The enemy was regrouping, their shadows stretching across the ridge. Daniel clenched his jaw. "We can't stay here. We have to move." She tried to sit up, but her body trembled. "I cannot go far." "Then I'll carry you," Daniel said, firmly. Her eyes widened slightly. "You would fight an army? For me?" Daniel's voice was steady, without hesitation. "I already am." He lifted her carefully into his arms. She was light despite her armor, fragile despite her power. The enemy shouted orders, preparing to descend. Daniel adjusted his grip on his rifle, heart pounding. He ran. Through smoke and fire, through ruins and broken machines, Daniel carried her. He fired when he had to, ducked when he must, always keeping her shielded. His legs burned, his lungs screamed, but he refused to stop. Behind them, the enemy pressed hard, their weapons lighting up the ruins. Explosions shook the ground, but Daniel pushed forward, driven by something greater than survival. He wasn't just protecting a stranger anymore. He was protecting a queen. At last, he reached a ridge overlooking the valley. The path was narrow, the drop steep, but it was the only way forward. Daniel set her down gently, his chest heaving. She looked at him, her face pale, her eyes shining. "Why do you fight so hard for me? You could leave. Save yourself." Daniel shook his head. "Because I don't leave people behind. Not anymore." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "You are different from others. You are human." Before Daniel could reply, the enemy reached the ridge. Dozens of soldiers poured into view, their weapons raised. There was no escape. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle, standing tall in front of her. His voice was steady. "Then we make our stand here." The first shots rang out. Daniel fired back, each shot precise, each movement fueled by sheer will. He fought like a man with nothing to lose, but everything to protect. The enemy closed, in their numbers endless, yet Daniel refused to fall. Beside him, she raised her hand weakly, the crystals in her armor glowing faintly. Energy surged outward, striking the enemy with bursts of light. Her strength was failing, but she gave everything she had. Together, they held the ridge. The battle raged until Daniel's rifle clicked empty, until her energy dimmed. The enemy moved closer, surrounding them. Daniel stood firm, sweat and blood on his face, his body trembling but unbroken. He looked down at her. She met his gaze, her voice a whisper. "You fight for me as if I am yours." Daniel nodded. "You are not my enemy. That's enough." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the chaos around them seemed distant. She whispered words he barely heard. "Perhaps you are my destiny." Then a roar split the air. From the skies above, ships descended, human ships, reinforcements. Daniel's heart leapt as friendly fire rained down on the enemy, scattering their forces. The ridge shook, but this time with hope. The enemy, realizing defeat, pulled back, retreating into the smoke. Silence returned, broken only by the distant rumble of engines. Daniel fell to his knees beside her, his body heavy with exhaustion. "We made it." She looked at him, her face pale but alive. "Because of you?" He shook his head. "Because of us." For the first time, she let out a soft laugh. It was weak, but it was real. "Perhaps humans are not as simple as I believed." Daniel smiled faintly. "And maybe you're not as mysterious as you wanted me to think." Her eyes closed slowly, her body finally giving in to rest. Daniel watched her for a long moment, then lifted her again. She was no longer just a stranger, she was the last heir of a lost people. And now somehow her fate was tied to his. As the human ships landed, soldiers rushed to meet him. Their eyes widened when they saw who he carried, but Daniel's voice was firm. "She's with me. And we're not leaving her behind." The soldiers hesitated, but Daniel's tone left no room for argument. Together they led him aboard, carrying both soldier and queen into safety. As the ship lifted into the sky, Daniel looked down at her once more. She had whispered the truth in his arms, revealed her face, her secret, her destiny, and Daniel knew. One thing for certain, the war was far from over, but now humanity had a part to play in something far greater than survival. He held her hand gently, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Whatever came next, they would face it together.